Ukraine's counteroffensive is becoming more difficult in the strategically important Kherson region than in other parts of the country because of the weather and terrain. World leaders are set to meet in 2 weeks for COP27 in Egypt, but the UN says many of them have not fulfilled their pledges from last year's climate conference.
Clashes between police and emboldened Iranians continue as the White House imposed new sanctions on Iran.
Ukraine's counteroffensive against Russian forces in the southern Kherson region appears to have slowed because of wet weather and the terrain. Ukraine's defense minister, however, claims Kyiv's forces are still putting pressure on Russian troops. The region is strategically important and has been occupied by Moscow since the start of its invasion. Russia's appointed governor in Kherson announced that around 70,000 civilians have been relocated from the right bank of the Dnipro River to the left bank in the Kherson Oblast. The onslaught of the Ukrainian armed forces is said to be the reason, but Ukrainian authorities believe that Russian forces are in fact digging in for the heaviest of battles. In Moscow, President Putin has overseen scheduled military drills, simulating a massive nuclear strike via a video link. The current narrative from the Kremlin continues to claim that Ukraine plans to detonate a radioactive device or a dirty bomb in a false flag attack to blame Russia. No evidence has been provided. Meanwhile, President Zelensky claims Ukrainian intelligence has revealed that Russia has used around 400 Iranian drones against the population of Ukraine.
Europeans are concerned about air pollution. To alert and denounce the inaction of public authorities, 9 Belgian citizens are suing the country's regional governments for infringement of their fundamental rights. At 34 years old, Eric van der Zende thought he no longer suffered from asthma, but for several years now, he's been having trouble breathing again. And that's why he feels the need to act.
5 years ago, my asthma came back and I realized that there was a direct link with air pollution. Because when I had breathing problems, I phoned my doctor and she said that I was free to double my dose of cortisone for a few weeks. But you should know that your phone call comes at the same time as the pollution peak.
The legal action launched Monday comes just weeks after 7 citizens launched a similar case in Germany. The 9 Belgian complainants are calling on the authorities to reduce the pollution thresholds in line with the recommendations of the World Health Organization. On Wednesday, the European Commission proposed new, stricter rules on air quality. The aim is to bring the EU closer to the WHO standards by 2030 and to achieve zero pollution by 2050. Air pollution causes the premature deaths of 300,000 people in Europe every year.
With this legislation and the current legislation, we account that in the upcoming 10 years we will be able to decrease these deaths by 78%. So that will not only add to our citizens' health, but that will be a beneficiary for our economy.
The Commission is also proposing to make it possible to take collective legal action if citizens' health is affected by the violation of EU air quality rules, meaning the cases in Belgium and Germany could potentially be repeated in the near future. Christopher Pitchers, Euronews, Brussels.
The United Nations has issued a warning that the world is not doing enough to combat climate change. Only 24 out of 193 nations submitted updated and strengthened climate plans to the UN after making pledges to do so during last year's climate change conference in Glasgow, Scotland. Last year, 3 main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, hit record high levels in the atmosphere, causing major concern. As experts say, it is an ominous sign.
In all of those 3 gases, we have again broken new records. So we haven't seen any improvement in real atmosphere so far. And for example, during the past couple of years, we have seen lockdowns in many countries, and where the emissions have been dropping of carbon dioxide, but because of the very long lifetime, we haven't seen any improvement in the real atmosphere.
As global temperatures have already reached 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, the UN's report added that attempts to combat climate change have been insufficient in preventing temperatures from reaching the pivotal 1.5 degrees. World leaders are set to meet again in less than 2 weeks for the next conference, COP27, in Egypt.
Disturbances have continued through the night in Iran after a day of demonstrations over the death of Mahsa Amini. The protest came on the 40th day after the young woman died in police custody. Hundreds of people remained on the streets despite a security crackdown in the capital. The White House has imposed new sanctions on Iran and said it may be turning to Russia for help.
We are concerned that Moscow may be advising Tehran on best practices to manage protests, drawing on Russia's extensive experience in suppressing open demonstrations. The evidence that Iran is helping Russia wage its war against Ukraine is clear and it is public.
Yesterday's events around the country showed widespread anger over the death of the young woman in September is not fading. Protesters blame Iran's morality police for her death. More than 200 people have died in the ongoing violence.
Mercedes-Benz is expected to sell its Russian assets to a local investor, according to Russia's Ministry of Industry and Trade. The exit would make the German luxury carmaker the latest Western company to leave the country since the start of the war in Ukraine. The exact financial details of the transaction have not been disclosed.
Former president and left-wing favorite Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has won the backing from a group of local mayors in Brazil ahead of Sunday's presidential runoff. Many Brazilians view the 30th of October vote as the country's most important election since the South American giant emerged from a military dictatorship in 1985. Analysts believe the outcome of the increasingly close race will be down to who gets the undecided voters on their side. Also on the campaign trail is the far-right Christian nationalist President Jair Bolsonaro. He's claiming Brazil is menaced by a corrupt left and has also accused the Supreme Electoral Court of interfering with the elections. Once again, without showing evidence, Bolsonaro alleged radio stations are unequally broadcasting electoral advertising. Lula came out on top in the first round and is currently 7 points ahead in the opinion polls.
Both industrial designers and teachers, Olof and his wife Yuki, are proud of the products they grow in one of the allotments rented by the city of Malmö in the south of Sweden. A way for them to fight against overconsumption.
The global food system, their ambition is to provide everything at any time in any spot. When the energy prices go up and when there is insecurity, it's a very unstable system. We should of course look at alternative ways of providing ourselves with food.
The city of Malmö has been exploring all avenues of sustainable economy since the 1970s oil crisis. Bicycles represent more than a quarter of urban traffic in this city of some 340,000 inhabitants. 65% of buses work on electricity, the rest with biogas made from organic wastes. It's also used for most of Malmö's garbage trucks.
Nothing goes to waste, so that is one beauty that gives me much more joy doing this kind of a job.
More than 600,000 tons of waste are treated per year in this plant, coming from the area and from all over Europe. Turned into slurry, the organic waste will be recycled into fuel in another company. The rest supplies the urban grid with energy.
We are providing Malmö City for almost 70% of the district heating. And we produce about 270,000 megawatt hours electricity during 1 year.
Over the past 30 years, policies in Malmö have helped reduce energy consumption by 40%. But the city is not immune to the impact of the war in Ukraine on energy prices. Indexed to European market prices and due to a decrease in local resources, they have multiplied by 4. Find out more in our full Euronews Witness Report this Thursday at 9:45 p.m. CET and all weekend.